everyone, and welcome to the afternoon of the day one, and to the last 1.5 hours. Well, I will entertain you with the digital twins. To the most talked about topics in the industry, what I often like to refer the elephant in the room. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the digital twin landscape, the impact of digital twins in your day-to-day life, and give you some practical insights from the implementation of digital twins across the life cycle, and some of the lessons I learned from the failures in the adoption of digital twins. But before taking you through this digital twin journey, let's take a moment to introduce myself. If you're still wondering where my accent is from, I was born and raised in Italy, in a town called Turin in the northwest of the country. I started my career qualified as a land and building surveyor in 1998, and I mostly worked in civil engineering projects from my hometown. In 2005, I moved to London, where I continued my career at Greenwich Council, worked for the London 2012 Olympics, but I always been a technologist, so after that I was headhunted to Autodesk, where I spent over 5 years looking after the North Europe and then the major accounts. In the last 20 plus years, I also accumulated quite a few academic degrees, including BSc in Environmental Economics, an MSc in Transport Engineering, and MBA from the University of Cambridge. But for the last 4 years, I've been running my own company. BY is a management consultancy company, initially with offices in London, now Melbourne, Australia. I started working with startups and SMEs, and I started bringing and help them to bring their products to market. And but in the nowadays, digital twins management consultancy services is now my main line of business. This is the first time I present in Australia. I am recognized as one of the influencers in this industry, and I will be chairing the Digital World Build Summit in Sydney on the 23rd and 24th of May. Here in Australia, I sit on a few industry panels around the world. Here in Australia, I sit on the ABAB Asset Management Technical Working Group. I do a lot of lecturing at the universities, and for the 3rd year, lecturing at the University of Melbourne, sharing my knowledge and experience in implementing digital twins for built assets. I also wrote quite a few publications, one over 3 years ago, and one of the recent ones that I'm going to be talking about today. So let's start with some basic concepts. And I'm sure you probably, have already some views on this topic, and a bit like John this morning, I found this image last year on Twitter that summarized very well the confusion that there is around this topic and this terminology. And it's a very confusing market, yeah? There is no other way to explain this. And only a few years ago, when I started writing my first publication on the topic, I can assure you there was no decent publication, yeah, on what digital twin means for our built assets. Nowadays, there is hundreds of academic papers and publications, and also what I like, a lot of, nonsense marketing material, yeah, trying to sell you the latest digital twin solutions. So hopefully by the end of this session, you have a bit more clarity on this topic and what it means to you. So for anyone who heard about this terminology but doesn't know where it comes from, so I'll give you a bit of history. So it was actually Dr. Michael Breath from the University of Michigan that in 2003, during its course on product lifecycle management, introduced formally, officially, this terminology, describing the digital twin as a virtual digital equivalent of the physical product with three main prerequisites, yeah? The real space, the virtual space, and the connection that ties the two together. So as you can see, it's a concept that was born in manufacturing and is kind of struggling to adapt to the very, very long life cycle, construction life cycle. And we heard this today quite a few times. It means different things to different people. And I think John this morning said, oh, it's 5 different answers, and Bob Ray said like 15. I can tell you it's hundreds, yeah? And then so it really means different things depending on where you are in the life cycle. So let's talk a bit more about the landscape, and it's very, very important. So the digital twin terminology is currently used, yeah, for a very large variety of outputs, yeah? So you will see 3D laser scans, 3D models, BIM models, sophisticated IoT dashboards, VR unicorns, how I like to call them. They all describing the products, yeah, as a digital twin. It's very, very important. It just means different things, and just don't assume that everyone has in mind, when you use the terminology, the same output. It's one of the other things that, apart from being obviously heavily leveraged as a marketing exercise, is there are certainly now new requirements coming into the market. So I've been called in quite a few times over the last, 3 and so years about these new digital twin tenders that are coming out in Australia, a lot in Middle East. And they're all requesting, the creation of these digital twins according to the ISO 19650. And what is also very interesting is these new brownfield, assets are requesting the creation of digital twins without specifying what should be included or excluded. So it's a very, very confusing market. So many organizations around the world are trying to bring clarity and make sense of this confusing digital twin market. And this is just a selection of organizations I follow, from the Center of Digital Build Britain, soon Digital Catapult, Digital Twin Consortium in the US, Digital Twin Cities in the Nordics, the very active Smart City Council here in Australasia and New Zealand. And the ABAB, early last year, if you want to know a bit more, published a positioning paper summarizing a lot of the work that has been done and initiatives on this topic down under. Many governments are now mandating and embracing the digital twins as a response to government policies on a diverse range of issues. The UK was probably the first I've seen embracing this opportunity with the launch of the Gemini principles over 3 years ago, and with the establishment of what I just already mentioned, the Centre of Digital Build Britain, and the consequential launch of the National Digital Twin Programme, with the goal of creating an ecosystem of connected digital twins to ensure secure, resilient data sharing and effective information management across the entire UK infrastructure network. In Europe, the European Commission is investing heavily in the EU-wide framework for a digital building logbook. Yeah, and I was part of the initial research. There is now, it just closed the call for the creation of POC from it. And in simple terms, is a database of building-related data to ensure data availability and transparency between the various stakeholders across the entire life cycle. In Middle East, I've just come back from the Digital Twin Conference in Dubai. It's a very hot topic. There is entire cities being built down under, and majority of the tenders are all asking for digital twins, and according to ISO 1960. And probably you know this better than me. Here in Australia, you might have heard of the New South Wales Spatial Digital Twin and the Digital Twin for Sydney, but also the $35 million currently spent to deliver a digital twin Victoria. Very, very ambitious projects. So as you've seen, the concept of digital twins has gained significant momentum in recent years, and probably it's unlikely it's going to stop. So you probably heard this quite a few times today. So what is the purpose of digital twins? So for our built assets, so the primary purpose is to use the digital representation to gain valuable insights to improve the operation and management of the built asset. So in fact, you will find that the majority of the literature addressing this topic is for the benefits of the OpEx phase. But what does it mean for the early stage planning and detailed design of the construction phases? So to share some light on these stages, we published this white paper with the Raleigh Institute of Chartered Surveyors, giving some perspective for professionals and stakeholders working in the early phases of the construction life cycle. So if you want to deep dive, you can scan the QR code and download your copy. So there are a few tools and graphics that might come useful to you if you are starting to embrace this digital twin journey, such as the representation of the functional elements of a digital twin, and the physical, the virtual space, and the very important characteristics of the synchronization in terms of fidelity and frequency. Another useful research, I get asked a lot, what does an architecture of a digital twin looks like? And you can find that too. Not all scenarios and use cases require complex system architecture. Having said that, it really depends on the use case you're addressing, and even simple ones can get really, really complicated. So we heard this millions of, already lots of times. Digital twins, it's a data-driven process, and the vast majority of the digital, data is created, managed, and used throughout the life cycle, involving multiple project teams, members, and stakeholders. Exchanging this very large amount of digital data require the use of a structured information management process. And I think, well, you all know what that is called, right? So, but what is happening now? It should be, pretty simple in the design phase. We create what, for the majority, is going to consist and be part of the digital representation of our asset, and then we build the asset. So it should be very, very simple to create our digital twin. Well, it's not really that simple. The reality is what is happening now is that even when the BIM process is followed, and the so-called BIM model is created, the digital representation really, for the majority, most of only the scenarios I came across, only really includes the geometry. And whereas in order to leverage this digital data across the entire life cycle, and then in the OpEx phase for the purpose of creating digital twins, our asset, we need rich metadata that can easily be searched, queried, and turned into insightful decisions. I always say we need the Google, right, of our asset. So what is happening now, it's a huge breakdown from CapEx to OpEx, devaluing significantly the value of digital data information that is currently collected. So there is already a large amount of data being created, and it's either missing some very important elements, or is not the right format, or is not structured appropriately to be successfully reused in life. So why is this happening? Many of these are under control. These elements are under our control. Some are very difficult to tackle. And these are the legal framework, the industry practice, the lack of interdisciplinary collaborations, the common language, and the interoperability. And there's going to be a panel discussion later at the end of this session, and we're going to be discussing some of these key challenges. So in the RICS publication, you can find a very useful table showing how the data, information, and information management process effectively contribute to developing, deploying, using, and updating a digital twin through the use of technology, processes, and practices type of data, and in the context of the life cycle stage. Very important aspect. We discussed a lot about this. So BIM, so BIM is not a must-have for digital twins in the built environment. That was our outcome. But it does represent an efficient mechanism for creating an accurate and high-value virtual representation. And there is no doubt the organization with very good BIM practices and effective usage of structured data and reasonably mature information management process will probably have an easier life in adopting digital twins. And lastly, I would like to highlight in chapter 4, there is a great table presenting the different type of scenarios of digital twin applications from design phase to the handover phase. And they're based on the type of asset and the use case. Certainly not exhaustive, but a great starting point to help you to assess, if a digital twin is useful or not, and if you should consider it or not. Because, in fact, it is all about the business case and the use case you are trying to address. I get approached a lot on, to help and support with either strategy or the implementation of digital twins. And I always ask, the first question is like, why, what's the purpose? What are you trying to achieve? And unfortunately, I have to report that more than, often is the answer is, well, I don't know, the executives want this, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure. And it's very, very important that before you even start, considering is to ask your question is why do you want the digital twin, what you are trying to achieve, and how you're going to create and produce this digital representation. And then if you think that the digital twin can provide value because it costs less than what the output is going to produce, then definitely you should, embrace the digital twin and opportunity. And to describe the importance of this concept, I would like to use the metaphor of the elephant in the circus. Our asset data is the elephant in the room that everybody is so uncomfortable to talk about. The circus ring is our construction life cycle. And as we say, during the life cycle, we exchange a very large number of data. However, there is only just enough data that can be collected, created, and maintained throughout the construction life cycle sustainably. Producing just enough on what we need and structure it appropriately will underpin the successful creation, operation, and more efficient use of our built assets throughout lifetime. I strongly believe that the most challenging fundamental task that we have as construction professionals, which wants to leverage the digital twins, for our built asset, is keeping the weight off the elephant. And why this is important? Learning how to keep the weight of the elephant effectively represents the biggest opportunity to digitize and improve the most important industry at the base of our society. As a construction professional, we have a duty of care to leave a more efficient, productive, and sustainable built environment for future generations. Access to structured data and consistent, current, and also real-time asset information enable us to create digital twins, which enable us to create smart buildings, we heard this earlier, and consequently smart cities, and then ultimately allowing us to optimize operations and performance by continuing benchmarking. Ultimately, we are not only benefiting by improving the operations of our built assets overall, but we can enable the virtuous circles to improve our society overall. And I would like to finish with the lesson learned. I'm afraid to report, as I said, I see a lot more failures than successes in the implementation of digital twins. As I mentioned, it's about the who, the why, the when, what are you trying to do? Ask those questions, the business case, the use case. The data is only as good as the process. The building information modeling process, yes, it can help, but not necessarily is the answer. CapEx to OpEx information means handing over the data that can really be insightful information, not necessarily just the geometry. Interesting enough, all the scenarios I came across on digital implementation didn't take in consideration geometry as one of the main elements and one of the most important information to have, because it doesn't necessarily change. It's about discovering what you don't know about the asset, not what you already know. And so ultimately, wherever you are a designer, contractor, or operator, ultimately, your competitive advantage strongly believes your asset data. So to summarize this brief presentation, having access to the digital representation of our assets can provide a huge amount of value. We can't analyze the physical, but we can certainly analyze the digital representation, seeking for insightful information to reducing operating costs, optimize performance and sustainability, reduce rework, improve communication, which ultimately, on a macro level, translate into a better society, economy, and a better environment. And very interesting, one of the last benefits mentioned there is revenue growth opportunities. So we will hear, I'm very looking forward to hear from Anand in the next presentation on some of the opportunities when you have that and what you can do with it. I'm a very passionate advocate in the industry. You probably got that by now. I ran an editorial column out of the Nordics on acbusiness.com, and I do publish the Elephant in the Circle article, which is getting a lot of popularity, which obviously inspired this lecture. Some of the others, like House of Digital Twins, I've republished that I started the Clubhouse club, where I ran over 50 rooms asking the question, what is a digital twin for a built asset during the pandemic in 4 languages. Amazing experience to learn also from other industries on how they started implementing digital twins. That is the end of my presentation. Do we have Q&A or no? Yes, the next one from Anand. Great. Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Hey guys, please thank Cristina.